Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. We are getting off the Bruce train tonight, though I'm sure he will come up. In fact, my guest has already said, well, Bruce is not my main guy, but I do have some Bruce stories. So, gotta love that. Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Talk about Bruce.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Steve Boehm. I am professionally known in the music world as Steve Sxaks. I got that name from my first real punk rock band I was in at 12 years old, and it just stuck with me. I couldn't get rid of it if I wanted to. So everybody knew me as the one kid from that band, and then I just was around forever after that. The years, I've been a touring musician that's been on the road for 6 months, 9 months at a time. I've been on several continents playing music, multiple countries, almost every state. I then opened up a recording studio, and that's been my thing since then. Is just we're called Marston House Recording. Me and my business partner, Ethan, we opened the studio and just it blew up. I don't think either of us really expected it to blow up the way it did. We were two punk rock kids in Philadelphia and we opened up a hip hop recording studio. So it ended up just being way bigger than either of us ever thought. We started a video series called the Marston House Ciphers, and we've had people come in from Jamaica and Australia, Canada, all over the world to come be a part of this video series. And throughout that, I've really delved into education, and we've done a lot of like music teaching and everywhere from middle schools to college. And now I am, besides being a dad and still running the studio, I am writing books.
Okay.
That's the shortest version of me, and it was probably a little long-winded.
No, that was great. I can't wait. There's a lot of stuff there for me to dig into, but we always like to start at the beginning. So tell me, Steve, where did you grow up and what kind of music was your family listening to?
I'm a Philadelphia kid. I've lived in every part of Philadelphia basically and the suburbs around it.
Okay.
I grew up really my mom was big into like the Stones. That was her favorite is the
Okay.
Stones. And then she also had an affinity for some Biggie and some little bit of like 90s hip hop stuff and a lot of classic rock type stuff. And then she also was big into indie. And then my dad was really into AC/DC, Foreigner, like that stuff, plus a little bit of social distortion, the rock side of punk rock.
Okay.
So they both gave me their record collections, and that really struck my love of music.
Did that that's a little how young are your parents?
My parents are about 20 years older than me. I am 36.
Okay.
So they're in their mid to later mid 50s.
Okay. Yeah, because that's actually some pretty, and I guess it shows my age, right? The modern, you most like I graduated high school in 77, so I'm older than dirt. And like my parents were into classic country, and I often hear a lot of people talking about my parents loved classic rock
Right.
or song stylists. I don't usually get parents with hip hop background, so that's cool.
It definitely wasn't my dad's thing, but my mom liked some 90s hip hop and like I said some indie rock and now her iPod's crazy. It'll have Nicki Minaj and Alkaline Trio. So
Yeah.
it's so all over the place. Like she's both of my parents, they got divorced when I was pretty young, but they both would go with me to shows and picked up a ton of musical tastes from me as well. So it is interesting to see. My dad was in bands when he was younger too.
Okay.
He just got me into it, and then my uncle gave me my first guitar when I was about 11 or 12 and just immediately started a band. Didn't know how to play anything, but we gave it a shot anyway.
So the question I usually ask is, can you remember when you discovered Bruce and what about him spoke to you? But I'm going to twist that. Can you remember when you first heard punk and what about it spoke to you, Steve?
Now I could do Bruce as well because I do
Well,
remember
okay,
Bruce,
we
but
do
I
both.
can
Then we'll do punk and then we'll do Bruce.
So with punk rock, my best friend, who's the guy I actually went in the army with when we got a little older, his sister was like she was a little older than us, And
Yeah.
she always was wearing Misfits t-shirts and the Smiths t-shirts and all the like darker punk rock and new wave type band t-shirts. And then my other really good friend, his brother was about her age and he was into the Germs and all that wave of punk rock stuff. So just from having both of them and my dad who was into Social D and my mom did the Clash a lot and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
just pulling in all that, it really just grabbed me. And I think of my first punk rock album that I grabbed was either Screeching Weasel or it was either Screeching Weasel or Agent Orange, like some one of
Okay.
those two. They were like my first couple, and then I was hooked on it. Now I'm going, and anytime I saved up a couple dollars, I'm going to grab cassette tapes of Epitaph Records mixes, or and then it was just an all ever consuming thing. I'm going to record stores, I'm going to thrift stores and just picking up I found my Bad Brain CD at a thrift store for $1 and it just
Yeah.
absolutely blew my mind.
What about it? Why is that music speaking to you? Was it the energy? Was it the craziness? What was it?
Definitely the energy. Like I loved really at when I was younger, I was always the class clown and always getting in trouble at school. And
Okay.
I had they were trying to diagnose me with ADD and all that stuff. I was the original Ritalin kid. The fast music, like a Bad Brain song that's a minute and a half is just blaring through it. Yeah, we're sailing. Yeah, we're moving on. And it's just so fast and so aggressive and in your face, but just like it just really grabbed me. It was short enough for my attention span, and then it just was aggressive and fast. But I think also the lyrics too. I don't know what it was because neither of my parents are super like political or anything, but I was always very concerned with politics. I was writing papers in elementary school about presidential debates and stuff.
Okay.
I have one published my dad just gave me recently that from when I was in third grade, and it's hilarious to read. But so I think the lyrics I really identified with, and just my mom always said when I was in elementary school, I was everybody's advocate. So I always had to stick up for people and get
Hmm.
myself in trouble. And I think punk rock just sat with me because of that. It's everybody's welcome in the punk rock scene. It doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter your religion or race or anything. You're welcome at the punk rock scene, and that just something about that just makes me feel good.
Oh, I like that. So, yeah, flip and tell me the Bruce story.
So Bruce, I actually found through a band, of course, the hits. I'm from Philly, so I'm not far off
Yeah.
from Bruce.
If Jersey would argue that they are the holy ground, but Philly is right there. If
Right,
Jersey is one, Philly is 1A,
right.
because they accepted him very early, and he always does something special when he's performing in Philly.
For sure, exactly. So it's like everybody I knew was a Bruce fan. Just
Yeah.
always heard about the boss, the boss, the boss.
Hmm.
But again, I had only really dug in surface level. I knew the hits,
Sure.
obviously, and that, but it wasn't, I was at a point where I was even rebelling a little bit against like my parents' musical taste, and I didn't want to listen to any like AC/DC or Rolling Stones or anything, which I love now, but at the time it just wasn't punk rock enough for me.
By the way, I'll interrupt you, Steve, because you just made one of my points. I mention often that overall, and of course, I'm overcompensating and over exaggerating, but two types of people: the people that love their parents' music, and then as they grew up, they found their own music, but they never abandoned. And then the others that rebel against their parents' music. And then when they turn 30, they go, that guy Johnny Cash dad liked a lot. He's pretty good. So in
Yeah,
your case,
right.
hey, dad, that AC/DC, that's got some rocking stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I was really especially like that with the Stones.
Yeah.
I just thought they were just soft for some reason.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, I actually saw them with my mom, and I'm a huge Nick Cave fan, and Nick Cave did the intro of the show. And it was like
Ah,
this
cool.
it was super cool, and it really and I there was always songs again like the hits that I liked, but I never dove into the catalog enough even though I had her
Yeah.
vinyl collection. It just I was listening to Bad Religion and all these
Sure.
other bands
Yeah.
that were just faster. But with Bruce, there was a band that everybody just said really was heavily inspired by Bruce.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm not really hearing it. And again, I only ever heard the hits. They're called the Gaslight Anthem.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you're
Yeah, I
familiar,
was
but
gonna guess that's who I was gonna guess. That was who it is. Yes.
yeah, I was huge into them. I saw them a ton of times when I was growing up, and everybody would just always tell me like this is heavily Bruce influenced.
Yeah.
So finally, I dug more in, and it blew me away. It was almost like a modern copy of Bruce Springsteen with some of
Yeah.
these Gaslight Anthem songs.
Yeah.
And now I think they on their last album they just came back. They had Bruce Springsteen on the album.
Yes.
So, which is really cool. But that was more of my deep dive into them. And then once I dove more in, I hear a lot of different bands, especially from the area, that may have been punk rock or leaned punk rock, but definitely borrowed a lot of influence from Bruce Springsteen. And
Yeah.
again, I was also a huge Sopranos fan. So Steve Van Zandt, and I love The Daily Show with Max Weinberg being the drummer. So I had
Yeah.
a lot of
Conan. Yeah.
interest.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that is that part of it. So that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's get back to you mentioned getting a guitar, immediately starting a band. Let's talk to me a little bit more about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, my uncle gave me a guitar. It was just like an old Olympia, nothing
Hmm.
special, and I had no clue how to play.
Yeah.
It was just like I had one finger on it, just doing like fake chords with one finger. And a
Yeah.
couple of my other friends who also had no clue how to play, we
Hmm.
just said, we're going to start a band. Our first band was called 3 p.m., and it stood for Three Punk Musicians.
All right.
And it was bad. It was really bad. We had songs called Corporate Control, and it was just like under corporate control. It's like you're 12 years old. What do you know about corporate control?
Yeah.
Just, yeah, basically just mimicking what we heard. But then we transitioned that band 50 names before we landed on the name Sxaks,
Okay.
which came from the singer in the band. He was writing lyrics, and his handwriting was atrocious. And I'm like, Jordan, what is this word here? I think he wrote stuck. And I was like, Sxaks, Sxaks. And we're laughing and we're like, that's the band name right there. And that became our name. And we played all the time. We were on every local Philly like punk rock show. And we would just throw my drums and guitar amps in the back of my dad's truck.
Hmm.
He'd take us to Baltimore or New York or Jersey or wherever. We went all over the place playing. And we did that for years and years. And then finally, we broke up and I started a serious band called Fruit Punch. And we got signed to a label called QCR. And they were flying us all over the world to perform. It was a very hardcore punk rock band. And we were on, there was an older band called Pansy Division. We did this MTV documentary about them. And we got a lot of really cool opportunities because of it. But we were everywhere. And I
Okay.
just knew that there was no way that, we were ever going to be a mainstream band and be able to provide for like my family off of this. And I'm 17 years old thinking about this. Um,
Okay.
so I had been saying I was going to start a recording studio for years. And so I just started saving up the money we were making and we started a recording studio.
Did why a recording studio? What about that? The what part of that? Why did that appeal to you? Is it a business cinch that, like, hey, someone needs to do this, so that's a way I can hang in the music, or what?
I always really found that aspect of it super interesting. From listening to records to like going my first time in a studio, I was 12 years old. So that's when I had it in my head. I'm like, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
So we were again really terrible. And I went to so many different studios until we found this guy, Vince Ratty, who's just a incredible engineer. And he was just super nice to us and gave me some tips and wasn't scared to show me things. And that really just made me go, okay, I can definitely do this. And then that was really it. It wasn't just I just wanted to be involved in the creative process of making
Okay.
music somehow. And again, like besides a handful of bands until recently, like punk rock, I know this is funny, is starting to be a more mainstream thing. But back in the early 2000s, there was only a handful of like punk rock bands, and they were more on the pop punk kind of situation that were mainstream bands. So I
Mhm.
just didn't know if it was a, I never wanted to get a job. I wanted to work for myself. And at that time, I didn't think I was going to do the military. That was a shocker for everybody. But
I was going to say, when you're 17, you're signed by a label, are your parents freaking out you're traveling the world, or do they knew you had a pretty good head on your shoulder?
my dad always super supported the
Okay.
music stuff. Like he was, we built our first studio location by
Okay.
hand. Like we did the whole thing from the ground up, and it was me, him, and my business partner that did it together. So he's always supported the music very much. My mom, not as much, and my dad's told me before that if they didn't get divorced, I might not have made it as far as I did in music. Because she probably wouldn't have loved. We turned one of the spare rooms into the band practice place, and then he let us take the basement and we turned it into a punk rock venue. And I had bands from Japan and California and all over coming and playing in our basement and having the cops come shut us down. And my dad sitting there talking to him. So it was, I don't think my mom would have been as into that. But yeah, like I said, I think just knowing that there was a path to where I wouldn't have to go work for somebody and getting to still be a creative musically, that's why I chose the studio.
What, how did the military thing get involved?
So my friend I was telling you about, his name's Chad, whose
Yeah.
sister was important to my journey. He came to the studio one day. We have the studio. I'm 19 when we opened, and he goes, "I'm gonna go join the Marines." I'm like, "Me
Hmm.
too." And that was how it happened. We went to the Marine recruiter and they were like, "You're not getting in." And I'm like, I have all these very visible tattoos. So they were like, "Yeah, you can't get in with the tattoos, but you can get in." And he's, "No, we're going in together." So we went to the Air Force and they said the same thing. We went to the Coast Guard. They never were open. They we waited on them for a week and they just never
Okay.
opened. So we went to the Army and they're like, "Come on in. We'll waiver all those." So we went in the Army.
How long did you serve?
I did a total of 12 years between the Army and the Guard.
Wow.
It was fun.
That's pretty. What was your role in the military? What was your job?
I initially went in as a 92 golf, which is a cook. And then
Okay.
because I had the studio and I was like, what's the shortest basic training? And they were like, or the shortest AIT. Basic training is the same for everybody, but
Yeah.
AIT. And they're like, a cook. And it was either a cook or infantry, and they're about the same. And I was like, I actually love cooking. Like it's an art form. I actually had a
Yeah.
little cooking show at one point, and I'm like, okay, let's do that. So I did that, and then they assigned me to an infantry unit. So I ended up just reclassing and to 11 Bravo infantry and did I ended up doing a lot of counter drug and getting to do some really cool stuff with that Middle Eastern intelligence, domestic terrorism. I have a stack of certificates you wouldn't believe. But doing
Hmm.
the military really changed my opinion on it. Obviously, the punk rock, I had a huge distrust for it and everything, and I thought everybody was just going to be some kind of meathead, and nobody really is like that. It's just a bunch of people trying to survive, and I really appreciate getting the experience. And while I still am very similar to how I always have been politically, the military definitely taught me I can get along with anybody, and everybody does truly have the right to their opinion, and we could still be friends. It was a great experience.
My dad retired from the military, and I was thinking about it in high school, and but I was always the fat kid, and I knew that I there's no way I'd lose enough weight to be able to do. But one of the things he told me is sign up for the shortest shift that you can do. They will always let you re-enlist,
Right.
but they will not let you leave early.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, and I always thought that was really good advice. Sounds like you liked it.
I loved it. I genuinely did. It was a lot of fun. It again, all the people I met was just, and I got to do a lot of music stuff in the military too, which is
That's
cool.
what I was
So,
gonna, that was my next question. Did you get
yeah.
to, yeah,
Yeah, I did get I got a lot of music stuff. All my military people know a ton about my music career. A lot of non-military friends don't know as much about the military side. It just never comes up. I was
Right.
telling somebody this on another podcast actually, so I hate double dipping in stories, but
That's okay. Yeah.
basically it just never comes up in conversation, especially when I'm recording bands or rappers. They're
Yeah.
just kind of they want to know about music stuff, and they're not. I've never had somebody go, "Were you in the army?" It
Yeah.
just never came up before.
Yeah. The and then I you decided to do National Guard afterwards?
Yeah, yeah. So I wish I would have had your dad's advice and did the 3-year contract, but I did the 6,
Okay.
and then I did the guard after that.
Okay. Yeah, very nice. How do you go about making a studio and what's the key to making it successful?
We didn't know what we were doing. I actually
Okay.
didn't go to school until way later. Once I started getting into education and the bureaucracy just started driving me crazy. That was
Okay.
what really drove me to go to school. So now I have my master's in studio technology, but I'm working on my doctorate now too. Before I was like, I already have the experience and I had gotten jobs teaching music through just the experience, but there was always this bureaucracy, always the red tape. There was things like I was at a school in Houston, Texas called Workshop Houston, and I got a couple like a guitar center to give us some money to get a drum set and build these sound booths. And our executive director was like furious with me. And I'm just
Hmm.
like, why? Why? And he's like, don't you know we got to go through all this stuff and we got to do all these things. And I'm like, yeah, but we needed a drum set and there was no budget for the drum set. So I made it happen. And that's just not how it works. I had to learn the hard way. And I
Yeah.
had my buddy I was in the army with, he was a higher up guy at Facebook, and they paid for an artist to come and paint every door on each one of our studios. And that was a huge problem too. It was like, don't you think, why are they coming and all this stuff? And I'm just like, all right. So eventually when I left there, again, I just couldn't handle I loved the kids. I loved the job. I was there for a few years, but just I feel like it really handicapped my ability to get things done. And I said I would not do another situation like that unless I had my doctorate and I was running the program and I there was no more red tape. I
Yeah.
get there's still boards and all that stuff you have to deal with, but at least at a level of, hey, I'm getting a drum set. Nobody's gonna come down on me. That was
Yeah.
where, yeah, it was a really great experience, and I still do teach. Like I said, I'm not going back to a school system until I have the
Yeah.
doctorate completed, but I still do teach different internship programs for different schools. So they'll send us a couple kids, and we'll just have them at the studio on Tuesdays and Thursdays for an hour. It's just like a regular class, and that's great. But there's not really any red tape there. They send the kids over twice a week and we get to do whatever we want. But it's again, we're a little more on the outside. It is my dream to keep going with this just a little bit later.
Steve, why do you think is it going back to your ADD or why do you think you like doing different things?
Definitely the ADD. I do so many different things. It's really I'm actually like running for constable in my town now too because I'm just like I have so many things I want to do. Writing the book, and I did a season as a wildland firefighter. If there's something I see that's interesting, I want to go do it. I just feel like life is so short that I don't want to have regrets. There's plenty of stuff I do that I don't even like. And it's just okay, at least I got to try it. I just
Yeah.
don't want to look back and say there was this brief time I wanted to do firefighting. I wish I would have did it. It's no, I did it. So
Yeah.
it is a little ADD too. I do get it drives my wife insane. Like I'm sitting on a folk album right now that's really great, but I keep messing with the vocals and she's just put it out, just put it out. It's your best stuff you've ever done. And I'm like, the vocals aren't right. So I am a little bit of a perfectionist with that. And then I'll just move on to the next project and let that sit for a while. And the book, it took me 20 years to write this first book. I had this concept, another Jersey company, Troma, they did like the Toxic Avenger and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I was a huge fan of that stuff as a kid, and I met Lloyd Kaufman, and he really inspired me to write this book. He was very nice to me when I asked him what it would take to get my script into a movie, and he's like, "Do you have a script? What's it called?" And I'm like, "Invasion of the Punk Rockers, Who Drink Blood, the
Hmm.
musical." And he's just like, "Okay, if you really have a script, get in touch with me and we'll make something happen." I had no script. I'm sitting there
Yeah.
typing this thing up, and It was terrible, but through the years I kept revisiting. I love the title, and finally I got it to where it is today. But again, 20 years, that's my ADD. If I say I'm going to
Hmm.
do something, I'm going to do it, but there's no telling when it's going to happen.
I'm going to get to the book in a minute, but I'm curious. The, you know, J. Michael Stravinsky, and he did not originate the quote, but art is never finished, it's only abandoned.
Yeah.
And he, like my friend Tom Zoller talked about, he's written My Little Pony, he's done some My Little Pony covers. He has a book called Love and Capes and a superhero sitcom, and he's pretty successful as an independent comic book artist and illustrator. And he talks about that he could never get a tattoo because as an artist, he would have to design it himself. Yet there's nothing that he's ever drawn that 6 months later he wishes he could redraw it. And so with a tattoo, that just it's not going to work. I I'd love to hear some of the folk album, but so
I'll
you
send it
still
to
are
you.
good. You're still making music then.
Oh yeah, yeah. I am not a very pleasant person when I don't get to create something.
Okay.
And my
Yeah.
wife would definitely attest to that.
So
So I'm still making music.
okay, good. You started off telling the story. You were once again, hey, let's make a movie. And so you did the poor script, and your words, not mine.
Oh, it
So
was bad. It was bad. You could say
talk,
it.
yeah, talk about I guess the journey of how you continue to rewrite it. And so first off, to give the premise, what's the elevator pitch for the novel?
The book is called Invasion of the Punk Rockers Who Drink Blood. I dropped the musical from the title,
Okay.
but it's about a group of kids who are facing the real world monsters. Just the everyday, every kid who's gone to school understands that. The bullying, the kind of the class system of school, that's what they're fighting against. And they find punk rock. That's where they build their own community. And then now, while they're still facing these real world monsters, they're finding these otherworldly monsters or trying to invade their scene as well. So that's the elevator pitch for it.
Okay. Why just you just thought it would be fun to, as I'm looking at Amazon, vampire horror punk thriller, right? Is that the idea? You're like, Here's peanut butter, here's chocolate. Let's put this together and see how cool it is."
I think that might be it. You might have just nailed it on the head, but it is very cool. I writing it, I would just be up all night, every night. I put the kids to bed, and I'm in here midnight till 4 a.m. typing away at this thing, and I'd get to points where it's as I'm writing it, it's just coming to me, and I'm just like, this is exciting. I'm smiling. I'm rereading it. Oh, this is crazy. This is so
Hmm.
cool. And I am a big vampire fiction guy. Like I love vampires, monsters, and zombies are my like three favorite like bad
Hmm.
movie genre.
Yeah.
I just wanted to do something that was original and nobody's ever done before. And I thought definitely the twists in here. Everybody who's read it's just I was not seeing that happening, but incorporating the punk rock and being able to make it like super personal to me and draw on like real world experiences and people that I've met and just adding them into the story and it just felt right. Yeah, it was super cool and I think you nailed it there. I don't even think I had words to put it together until you just said it.
Oh, good, good. So what was as you started working with it, what was the process to get it published?
Oh, I had no idea. I had been doing music forever and I have a contract through Sony Orchard. I have my Sony rep through Who Mag and his name is Rob Schwartz and he's helped me get songs in movies and I've put out hundreds of albums of mine and other artists through him. I've produced comedy specials. I've done so many things in TV, film and music. But the book was brand new to me.
Okay.
I had no idea what to do, and nobody in my circles really knew what to do either. I had a couple friends who just did PDF books that they put out on like underground websites that you could get. And I had been in a couple other books, just featured in things, but never wrote one. So when I finally was like done with it, there's a website, I think it's called Readsy, and it
Okay.
just tells you everything you need to know about putting a book out. It's got links you with copy editors and formatters and publishers and publicists and pretty much everybody. It gives you all this different stuff on, it has an AI model on there that you could type in what you're trying to do and it'll give you like a little deal that can, how to go about it. And then it has all these different people. So if you're looking for a copy editor, you can email them and they'll give you a price on it. And it has their profile so you can approach them. And it teaches you how to write a query letter, which I had no idea about. So I queried hundreds and hundreds of publishers and just it turns out that my aunt is my uncle's wife. She's an agent. So she ended up her name's Chrissy Gary, and she's an entertainment lawyer and an agent. So she worked for Robbie Knievel and all these other people, and so she helped me out a lot with figuring
Mhm.
all this stuff out. And then a lot of it, though, like I said, was Reedsy and going on there and finding formatters and finding copy editors and finding developmental editor. And yeah, so that was really it. It was just guerrilla warfare. I also do have an issue with just wanting to figure things out on my own.
Okay.
Yeah, I like to have my product where it needs to be before I try to find help. I'm sure I'd be farther along in life if I would just be like, "Hey, you do this. Come help me out here."
Yeah. So let's go back to the studio. It, are you, is it the same? Like, where are your studio located and where do you talk about some of the experiences you've had working with artists, if you don't mind, Steve?
Yeah, of course, of course. So we were the first place I was telling you about. We were there for about 5 or 6 years before we moved to North Philadelphia on like right off Temple campus, and we've been there for 10 years now. We are looking to expand again, so we're thinking about maybe purchasing our own building and doing something like just a bigger version of what we're doing now. But we've been open for 16 years. And it's the best. I think it's one of the hardest jobs because you really have to hustle, but it's one of the best jobs, especially if you love being creative. You are solely responsible for how a song turns out. I say that the engineer is the most important but least credited person. There's big name guys that people know, like a Rick Rubin or a handful of others, but for the most part, the average listener, especially since people don't read the album notes anymore since it's all digital. The average listeners not does not know your name. But I say that I call it creating an environment. The engineer creates the environment that they want the listener to be in while they're listening to it. So with a Bruce Springsteen or with any classic song or any music you love, the engineer brought that to life. It's the drums have the feeling that you're looking for when you're wanting to listen to music. The reverb in the vocals, the reverse swelling reverb on the cymbal as it crashes, and just all those little effects that somebody had to create really just bring these songs to life. And so we have, when we first started, it didn't matter day or night, 3 o'clock in the morning. If somebody called me wanting to get in the studio, I'm picking up the phone and I'm going to work. That was the mentality that I had at the time. And we did that for years and years. And because of that, we were really very successful. But it is very hard to do that and have some kind of life
Yeah,
balance.
I can
Uh,
imagine.
yeah, it was a lot of sacrifices and a lot
Mhm.
of not great relationships because of it, but I wouldn't change anything.
What I find interesting, Steve, is as we're recording this, I just had a guy named Martin Porter on
Mhm.
the podcast, and he wrote a book, Buzz Me In, The History of Record Plant Studio. And he's a sound nerd.
Okay. We'd probably
And
get along great.
yes, and so I talked to him. I said, Martin, I went to the 50th anniversary of Born to Run symposium, and Bruce is there, and Jimmy Iovine is there, and he was the engineer on Born to Run,
Right.
and that was his first time getting to be an engineer, and they talked a little bit about that, and so I asked Martin, right? I'm like, let me be a nerd for a moment or show my like producer, engineer, what's all this mean? And he did exactly what you just said. He said, go grab a record go grab a physical record. We're going to go through the credits and tell you what each one does. And he did. He talked about how important an engineer was. That that the producer, he's like talking about the artist and helping them, and some artists are their own producers. But he said that engineer working with the sound guy, moving, we're okay, we're going to put this here, the mic there. Yeah. And I think it, do you think your success not only is because you were so hustling, but do you think being a musician yourself, you have that musician whisperer kind of gene?
I think in some ways, yes. In some ways, no. I do think being a musician, it can help you in being able to relate and coach another musician.
Okay.
That's like the biggest benefit from it, especially if you've had a lot of studio experience. I do think I have a really good talent for getting the best out of an artist. Maybe somebody's not hitting a note right. I could try to sit there and match them and help them get a note. I can teach them a little bit on how to comfortably stand in front of a microphone. And now everybody's reading off a phone and where
Yeah.
to position it to not look away from the capsule of the microphone. So I think that it helps you with stuff like that. But I think it can hurt you too because you do get every musician, I don't care what anybody says, has an ego. And you listen to music and you think, oh, I could do that better. And you maybe want to see yourself in some people when that's just not going to be the case. Or you're hearing something, you're like, no, you need to, if you just took out this one word, it'd have the perfect amount of syllables to fit perfectly in this bar and you'll be great. But that's not how they're intending to do it. So it's a little bit of a, for a musician turning into an engineer, it's a little bit of a challenge. And there's other positions too. There's two types of producers. There's a studio producer who does exactly what you said. They're working with an artist, and if this artist needs a saxophonist or if they need a keyboardist, they're organizing that and they're organizing the whole session. That's a studio producer. And now, like a modern, what most like younger people now know as a producer is the person who arranges the music.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people are referred to as a producer. And so when you're that type of producer, transitioning to being an engineer is also very tough. And that's why a lot of times labels they'll send you to record at one studio, they'll have another studio mix it, and they'll have a third studio master it. They'll bring an outside producer to be the studio producer, and they'll bring an outside producer who's arranging the music. And they just get as many ears on these things as possible just to really do all the checks and balances. And that's how a lot of the bigger productions work. And we've done plenty of those. But a lot of the smaller guys, they don't care.
Yeah.
Music has changed so much. And I tell people all the time, probably am going off on a tangent.
No, you're
I'm,
okay.
I'm
You're
a
good.
rambler. But
No, no, you're good.
when we first started, there was no option. This is about 2008. There was no option for decent, cheap home recording gear. There was no, unless you're spending thousands of dollars on a microphone and you're getting A to D converters and D to A converters and all this different stuff. There was no, like right now, I'm recording on a $500 UA Volt 76. That didn't exist at the time. Anything you were getting to record at home was just trash. They had
Yeah.
M Audio stuff and the Personas Blue Box, and it was just garbage. And the microphones that were under $500 were garbage. And now people are doing hits like radio hits on $100 Scarlett 2i2 interface and $100 microphone. And I think that's great. You know what I mean? Coupled with YouTube, I think there's a ton of wrong information on YouTube that'll steer young engineers and producers the wrong way. But if you have the ability to filter through all the garbage that's there, there is some gold. So between YouTube University and maybe a $500 tops budget, you can have a decent thing going on and produce music that's a hit. So it's changed the landscape of all of this drastically, where people are the studio producer, the engineer, the mixing engineer, the mastering engineer, and the music arranger. And if you're not able to fill all those hats for an artist, they're just going to go somewhere else that can. So I think again, being a musician, going back, flipping this thing full circle, being a musician can help you know how you would want to do all these different roles or how you'd want these people to treat you. So I think it helps you getting into playing multiple things as long as you could check your ego at the door and remember, hey, this isn't your song. I've had
Yeah,
engineers. I have one last thing on. I've had engineers where I'll have a band or a rapper or a singer in, and they'll be playing the music, and all of a sudden this engineer is like singing, and they're like, "This is my." I've had to pull engineers off of projects for stuff like that. So again,
yeah,
check your ego, and remember, this is not your song. You're helping them be the best that they could be.
yeah. And I think that it it is that you have to find that middle ground.
Right,
If they're asking for advice, great. Or when do you overstep and how do you not? Like, and I have a healthy ego too. And so when I listen to a podcast, at times I can go, I think I would have done a little better interview. I would have liked to have that person. Or other times I go, damn, that was good. They really were
right.
good at that. And it's hard not to, when you do that, to I love the idea. I was hearing people who are showrunners, TV showrunners, and they'll talk about the guys who do dramas, 1 hour dramas. Will say they can't watch other 1 hour dramas. They have to watch either cooking shows or sitcoms because when they watch a drama, they can't turn their brain off.
Right.
They're like, why did they do the ad break there? Why did they do that? Oh, I would have done this differently. You can't turn your brain off. And I imagine, right, there's that fine line between I want to give them my expertise because that's partly what they're paying for, but at the same time to remember ultimately it's their vision that they've got to I've got to help them reach.
Exactly. Your job is it's a customer service position basically. It's kind of
Yeah.
like a barber. Like you could be the greatest engineer just like you could be the greatest barber, but if you don't make your client feel good, there's so many options though, or just they'll
Mhm.
do it on their own at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're a good engineer, you can guide people to do what you want to do without hurting their ego or throwing them off of the balance. And I
Yeah.
always, when I'm getting a take out of somebody, I always hit them with a compliment first. I'm just like, oh, this was a really good take. I think though, at this part, maybe we can get a little more energy right here. I'm going to keep this one. And blah. You could do things and say things
Yeah.
that won't make them feel. Now, if you stop and you're like, this one sucks. I need you to do it again. I can't even work with it. That's instantly you're throwing them off the game. You want to just continuously lift them up and
Yeah.
make them trust you. I always say, I tell all my students, all my other engineers, you're in the captain seat and you have to earn their trust because the second you lose it for any reason, you're done. So if you're sitting
Yeah.
there playing on your phone or anything and they're like done a take and you're not instantly stopping and having a conversation with them in the booth, it's just you lost their trust and they're going to go somewhere else.
All right. So you teased. Did you have a couple of Bruce stories you wanted to share?
My biggest one was definitely how the Gaslight Anthem made me
Yeah.
dive super deep
Okay.
do into the
Bruce. Okay.
catalog.
Okay.
Just because again, it wasn't punk rock enough for me.
Sure.
And then you find out it really is. Like lyrically, there's a ton of it that's just
Yeah.
like you might a little bit faster and it might have as well been an early punk rock record.
That's very
L-
cool.
but that was my biggest thing. I guess
Okay.
I
That's
spoiled
good.
it early.
No, no. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss one. Who who do you want to work with that you haven't worked with yet?
I
Or
now
better
if
yet, go ahead.
I was gonna say if I could work with Nick Cave, I'd feel like I completed my musical journey. It would be
Okay.
that big for me. Nick is just such a every album is different, which is something that I've really done myself. He
Mm,
could put out his early stuff from the 70s at the Boys Next Door and then the birthday party before he even started doing the Nick Cave and the Bad Seed stuff. He went from like a new wave group to super just weird noise band and then he goes in Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds and it's like just this mind-blowing like Murder Ballads is one of my favorite albums ever. Just the features from PJ Harvey and just all these incredible singers that he got on there and just made this really strange ballads about just basically serial killer relationships. And it's just the, but then the next album is completely different from that. He's got full piano albums and he's got heavier, leaning back towards his earlier punky stuff. And, but yeah, if I had the opportunity, I've seen him 4 times.
That's what I was, my next question was. Yeah.
One time I was on tour in London and he just happened to be in London. The tickets were like 200 pounds. So it was like a $400 ticket. And it was like right when he put out The Death of Bunny Monroe, his book, which, so I
Hmm.
was definitely inspired, like seeing this guy that I respect so much. He had a few books. He did one with, it was called When the Ass Calls the Angel. And then another one I think he did with Henry Rollins and then The Death of Bunny Monroe. And it was just like, just very inspiring seeing him dip into that. And then he also scored film and scored TV and just did so much other stuff. But the London thing happened and the death of Bunny Monroe just came out and it was a show plus readings from the book. And I was like, I'm going, I don't care. We had a night off. It was like, there
Hmm.
is no way I'm missing this show. And we went to that and it was incredible. It was a super small, intimate venue. And somebody goes, if PJ Harvey were here, would you do Henry Lee? And he's if she was here, and they're like, she's right there. And so she came off the balcony and they did that song, and it was just like, I don't know, it was just a life-changing kind of experience for me.
That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, he's
Nice.
awesome.
Good. Very nice. What should I have asked you that I haven't, Steve?
Oh man, what should you have asked me that you have? I guess you could maybe what's coming next.
Yep, that would
'Cause-
be great. Okay.
Yeah, right now I briefly touched on my folk project. It's called Papa Bear. These are songs me and a friend of mine wrote when I was 15. Again, very different from the punk rock stuff or the hip hop stuff that I've done. And it's more, it is a little bit of Bruce, it's a little bit of Lucero, it's a little bit of just classic Americana and classic folk rock singers and a little bit of punk rock in there. There's some, I did put drums in there. It started as, like I said, I started writing these songs when I was 15, and then I had a project for my master's degree that was, we had to do 12 songs with 12 instruments per song. And I was like, you know what? This is the perfect excuse for me to work on this project. So yeah, I did that. And I was, again, if you ask my wife, I drove everybody crazy because I'm stressing. I'm like, I'm gonna fail this thing. It's gonna be terrible. And then I got to my council where all my teachers and professors were like
Yeah.
reviewing it, and they're like, we have no feedback. It's perfect. You set the bar very high for this, and you're good.
Nice.
Yeah, so I got a 4.0 in that whole degree, and I was like, all right, this needs to come out. But like I said, I've been so picky with the vocals, but that's one thing that's coming. I do have several hip hop projects I'm working on. I just released one last last month on August 15th. That was like a culmination of me and my friend Trey. We've been doing this thing called the free EP where we just dropped some free music and then we did the last one and put them all together. So it's like a 30 song collection of all of these things. And then I've been dropping music videos every week. So I'm out here still just doing all that, and I'm working on the sequel to Invasion of the Punk Rockers Who Drink Blood. The next one's called Defenders of the Punk Rockers Who Drink Blood, and that shall be out probably early next year.
Very nice. All right. In a few minutes, I'm gonna ask you final thoughts and how to reach you and let you promote stuff. But I end every podcast with what I call the Mary question.
Okay.
This came from Jay Armstrong, who was an honors English teacher in the Philadelphia area, another Philly boy. And when he was teaching, he's now retired, he would give his honors English students the lyrics to Thunder Road, and they would read it as if it was a poem, talking about the imagery and the themes that Bruce explores in the song. And then he would ask his students at the end of the class, "Do you think Mary gets in the car?" So, Steve, that is your question. Does Mary get in the car at the end of Thunder Road?
All right, so my interpretation. I'm telling you, I listen to this thing and I'm reading the lyrics and just like reading about the town, and I'm just like, why wouldn't Mary get in the road?
Okay.
But my initial thought was yes. But then as I went through it a few times, and I she sent the boys away and all that. I feel like she did not get in the car.
Okay.
I think that it was just another person who felt like they could take her away, where she's already sent these other boys away. So that was where I ended up on. Initially, I was like, why wouldn't you? The town sucks. You
Yeah.
got all these other pursuers, and you're not interested. So why not get in the car? But as I just continued to go through it and go through it, I just feel like maybe this is just my own inner self coming out, but it's just like old habits die too hard, jump in the car. And that's where I left it off.
I love it. That's a great answer. So, Steve, if someone wants to reach you, how can they? And then any final thoughts?
Yeah, you can get me on all social media. It's at Steve Sxaks. If you Google Steve Sxaks, which is Sxaks, incredibly Googleable. You'll probably find way too much information on me. But you can literally, if you reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, Threads, whatever, I'm a talker if you couldn't tell. You can email me at steve at Let's Go Guy. You can go to letsgoguy.com or stevescacks.com. You could go if you're interested in the Recording Academy, the Grammy Society. I'm a voting member on there. You can find me through that. Or yeah, that's or grab the book. If you grab the book, it also has my contact information in the back of the book.
Yes, Invasion of the Punk Rockers Who Drink Blood. I I don't know if you wrote this, but if the Lost Boys formed a band with Buffy, played a show in Jennifer's body, and were managed by the ghost of Sid Vicious, you get Invasion of the Punk Rockers Who Drink Blood. That
It's
is a hell of a blurb.
I did not write it, but I had somebody read it and they wrote it for me. I was trying to get Lloyd Kaufman to do the forward, and my patience was so low, I just wanted to get it out. So I had a
Yeah.
friend of mine read it, and that was what they came up with.
I love that. That is awesome. Steve, this has been a blast.
Great time. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
when the sequel comes back, you come back.
Oh,
All
I'd
right?
love to. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be
And
great.
get with me offline and I'll make sure I get you a copy of the book.
That sounds great. All right, listeners, go to the website. I'll include a link. Check out the book. It sounds like it's just going to be a blast. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Everyone, be safe, be kind, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.